I do not support this bill.
Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Ruth Dyson.
I begin my contribution in supporting the Crown Minerals Protection of Public Conservation Land listed in the 4th Schedule Amendment Bill by congratulating the member who introduced it, Materia Ture, and further congratulating Eugenie Sage who brought it to the House today. That was an extraordinarily considered and reasonable contribution that the member made, and I think it was sort of blindingly obvious actually that you'd support the legislation going to the next step. And then we heard from Nicky Wagner. Well, Nicky explained to us, and I think this will come as great news to the public of New Zealand, that actually the National Party never had any serious intention of mining in Schedule 4 land. That wasn't their intention. Actually, what they were doing was seeking feedback from the public. Well, Mr. Speaker, they got it. They got it. 50,000 people marched down Queen Street. Unheard of demonstration of people across the board, all manner of professions, backgrounds and ages, who said, not yours to mine. And now, Mr. Speaker, when we have the opportunity to have this put in legislation to reflect the public feedback that the member who's resumed her seat so clearly wanted and got, they're saying no. No, we'll just leave it as it is, because all we were doing was seeking public feedback. We don't want that overwhelming public feedback put into the law. Well, I do, Mr. Speaker, and I'm very pleased that Labor will be supporting this legislation, because the public don't have any faith in what Nicky Wagner said. We think it was more than just floating the idea out there to get public feedback. We think it was a real proposal. The public responded, and Maggie Barry again showing her true inclination to dig it and mine it. She's going to be supporting the legislation. I think she should go back to doing something where she can retain her integrity and credibility rather than coming here and voting against legislation which protects our Schedule 4 land from being mined. That is a really important thing to do, and nothing that member says will stop the public understanding that. Then Nicky Wagner said that actually another reason for voting against this legislation is because it's unnecessary, excessive and a regulatory regime that is too complex. Mr. Speaker, it's got 2 clauses in it. I don't really see how having the title, well, no, it's got the access clause to be fair, it's got the title, then it's got the commencement, then it's got clause 3 as the provision, the principal act being named, and then it's got clause 4, the access arrangements in respect of Crown land. Mr. Speaker, you couldn't actually have a bill that was less complex, less bureaucratic and less of a regulatory regime. Order. All it says is we don't want the National Party to mine in Schedule 4 land, the most precious land that has been determined because it's been put in the schedule and therefore should be protected. It has a different category because of being placed as Schedule 4 land. And then finally, the member made the point that it would be very easy under this bill for land to be removed from Schedule 4. Well, she can't have read the final clause. Perhaps it was a bit too wordy to wade through, because it's all of 6 lines long, but right in it, it says that this allows for amendment to Schedule 4 to add to, but not remove, any Crown-owned land referred to in subsection 1A. This specifically says it cannot be removed, it can only be added to as a result of this legislation. Mr. Speaker, it doesn't really matter whether the National Party were serious about mining in Schedule 4 land or whether they just wanted public feedback, because overwhelmingly New Zealanders said no to that proposal, whether it was floated or seriously proposed. What this legislation does is respect the views of the public, put it in legislation so that we can all have confidence that the genuine view of the public and our desire to see Schedule 4 land properly protected from mining is retained.
Jackie Dean.
Mr. Speaker, National